Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I have 6 of some of my favorite French country neutral Christmas projects for you today. The very first one is one I actually think you could use all year long in any French country vignette. I hope you enjoy this. So this ugly planter with these flowers with the feathers in it, I bought at a thrift store. It's tin and it has some ornate stuff on it. And I didn't even take out the foam, floral foam in there because it's really glued in there. And I'm painting over it with some Paint Couture primer. And I'm going to let that dry. And we're going to move on to our castings. And again, I'm going to go ahead and use the tapers, the angelic tapers. And I'm going to cast 4 of the same angel. I think it's the one that's a little bit bigger. There's 3 of them in this. They're all beautiful and they're beautifully, beautifully ornate. And you guys, this project, I mean, I say it's for Christmas, but you could really have this around up all the time. I think even that angelic picture would be something to give somebody, you know, or have for yourself year round. But definitely this project. So I'm going to do 4 of these because I'm going to put one on each side of this. I guess it's a planter. It's not really a vase. Kind of looks like a vase though too, but it has that foam on top. So I'm going to call it a planter. And you know, that's something too. When you go thrifting, look for the shape of something. Don't look at how it is. And you know, you basically just want, if it has a good shape, a good form, you know, buy it because you can always do something with it. So now what I'm doing is I am just putting my Titebond glue on each of these pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and put one on each of the sides. And it has kind of a slope to it, or a curve really, like it's concaved a little bit. And that's what's so great about using the air dry clay. The other thing is that air dry clay can crack a little bit and not be so perfect. And that's kind of the look I want. I want it to have a very old, rustic, not really rustic, vintage look. So I'm putting some painter's tape on there because this is going to be sitting straight up when it dries. And you don't want gravity, you know, to, you know, do its work and have your casting slide down, which, trust me, I've had that happen. And one thing I also do whenever I do castings and, you know, I'm worried about them falling or moving or whatever, before I put them aside, I'll go ahead and put the tape on like that. But I run my heat gun over them a little bit. And what it does is it makes that glue start to dry, and it adheres enough that it helps it keep it from falling. So, I mean, that's just a tip for me that I've learned, because I've come back to a project and seen whatever I put on it just be completely off of it or slid 2 inches or whatever. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I am taking one of my trimmings molds. I don't know which one, guys. It's one of the trimmings. You should get all 3 because honestly, you will use them. That's one mold. If you just get one, get at least one trimmings mold because you'll use it. They're a staple. So I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of some of this casting around the edges. I'm just going to jazz this up a little bit. And I put that all the way around. I'm just going to put my Type Bond glue. Type Bond will adhere to metal. This is all made, it has some sort of metal. And I'm going to just wrap it around the corner. And the way these things work is you can connect these together seamlessly. But again, because we're using clay, it will bend very easily and go around it. I have done it with resin, but it's not as easy. The clay is great. You just have to have enough patience to let stuff dry. I usually, when I'm doing projects like this, I finish them all. I, put the glue on and I let them dry overnight. And I, go over it with my coat of paint, so you don't have as much cracking. And then I let it dry overnight, and then you can go to town the next day. So then I cast a smaller piece to fit on top. That's what's so great about all of these trimming molds, and all of them are like this. They always have like the little thinner pieces, other pieces. So I let this dry for about an hour, and you always want to let it dry for about an hour so it gets like a crust on it. And you want to use a soft brush to go over it and then let it dry overnight. And here I am the next day going over this with my Fusion wood wick. And I'm going over the casting basically with the straight wood wick. And I'll go over the bottom castings and everything, all with just the wood wick. So I bet you can guess what we're going to do. We're going to layer. There's a little twist to this one though. So we go over all the castings. And one thing that you don't want to do is overfill your castings with paint or with salt wash or whatever, because you'll lose some of the definition. So if you're going to add salt wash, which I do later, you don't want it on the actual castings, because you'll lose some of that beautiful detail. So now what I'm doing is I'm mixing salt wash. And if you don't know what salt wash is, it's an additive. A lot of people say they use baking soda. I will tell you, personally, I think baking soda, while it does add texture, it performs very, very different. It doesn't adhere as well. It's kind of clumpier. You can't control the texture as much. And whatever's in salt wash, whatever additive it is to it, it definitely adheres to your paint better. Anyway, I am taking the salt wash and I made it very, very thick. I think you're supposed to do like 50-50, but I just mix it to whatever thickness I want. Sometimes I don't want a lot of texture. Sometimes I want a little. So you don't add water, you just add paint. And I did it very thick. And what I'm doing is I am going to be doing a dabbing motion, a stippling motion all over this. First I put it down and then I stipple on it, because I want this to be very, very textured. I want it to really look like old pottery. Chipping, peeling pottery. That's the goal. So having that texture at the bottom layer is really going to help. And I had put the paint couture on first so that my castings would adhere well, because this was metal and it was shiny and I wanted it to cover the black. Now what I'm doing is I'm mixing my milk paint, and we're going to be using the same milk paint, the Sweet Pickins window paint and flour sack. And I picked these two because they're close in color, but yet they're not. There's enough contrast that when you use them in conjunction, what it will do is it's going to add more layers and make your piece look more authentically old. Because, old paint or old pieces usually have layered paint. People tried to put more paint on, it doesn't match, or some of the paint is faded. So I'm going to mix up these two, and I always start with the darker color first. And I'm going to go ahead and use, that would be window pane here. And I think these are staple colors to have in your milk paint, because I use these all the time when I distress things. And whenever I distress things with milk paint and I go through this process, it flies off my shelves in my booths. I mean, if I put this in there, this will be gone in a day. It'll be gone because people love it. They love that old textured chippy paint look. So I'm going to go over this, and basically we're going to do like we did on the tree. We're going to not cover it 100%. I wouldn't say it's dry brushing. It's more than dry brushing, but I am not worried about getting every little spot. And with all this texture, there's going to be spots in there that I definitely miss. And I'm going to go over it with the window pane first. That's the darker color. And I know it's probably very, very hard to see the differences in this, the two, but up close, I promise you can really tell it has that effect of it just looking like it's faded or, overpainted a different white, Somebody got out a different can of paint to touch it up or something, So anyway, I make sure I get back in the back there, and then I go over it very lightly. I would say more of a dry brushing with the flour sack, which is the lighter color. Just because I don't want to cover all of this brown completely. I probably put more of the window pane down, and then when I go over it the second time, I go over it a lot lighter. So I'm going to do that, and with each layer, I definitely take my heat gun out, and I just really put the heat to it, because that is what is going to make the milk paint do some crackle and, have a little chippiness. And you can't really always see it when I'm filming, but I try and get up nice and close later so you can see that effect. And it's just really special. I mean, it's not the same as using crackle. It really isn't. It's just a very fine and chippy look, and sometimes you'll have chips of paint that come off, and I don't know. So here I am just dry brushing the white. I'm not trying to do a lot of it, and then again I'll go over it with the heat gun to give it even more of a crackled look. So now I'm using my Sweet Pickins oil wax in the dark, and I mean, I don't know, I really need to be buying this stuff by the gallon because I love it. And I don't think anything works better than the oil wax with the with the chippiness of the milk paint. I really don't. I think there's nothing that works better. So I'm going over everything with the oil wax, and then I'm wiping most of it back, and it gets in all those little fine details and really hangs on to where we put the salt wash. That's another reason to use the salt wash, is that all of that oil wax will hang in there and really look nice and old and chippy and wonderful, and I don't know, I love it. So anyway, I wipe a lot of it off, and I first, I'll use a wipe, and then I'll use a clean wipe to get a lot of that, wipe a lot of that color back, and go over the whole thing with it. And I go do all four sides and the bottom. So after I wipe all that back, I'm going to go ahead and kind of dry brush over this with the window pane and a tiny bit of the flour sack. The window pane is the darker white. And all that does is it brings back the brightness of it, and it'll kind of all mesh together. It won't look as bright as it is now. It'll blend in a little bit. but it'll give you more contrast because sometimes the oil wax can make everything look really dark. And so if you dry brush over it, you basically are using very little paint and you're just hitting the high points, and that'll give you more contrast. And after I do that, I take my mix. I use a spray bottle. I don't like to brush it on because I don't want to mix all of my different layers together. So you do need to seal it because I'm putting on more paint that doesn't have a sealer on it, and your milk paint isn't sealed, so you have to do this. So I take some of the Dead Flat, which I love, by Paint Couture. It's a sealer, but I mean it has no shine whatever. And when you're trying to do stuff like this, I put in a spray bottle, 50% Dead Flat with water, and I just spray over my piece because I don't want all of that work of blending together. I want you to see the contrast. And if you go over it with a brush or a wax, you're basically going to be blending it all back together. And you may want to blend it, but I want that contrast to show. Now, because I went over it with a water-based sealer, I went ahead and used my heat gun to dry it because that is going to actually add more crackle to it. It's a bonus. You're going to seal it and have more crackle. And that's it, guys. And I love this piece. I think it turned out gorgeous. You see it up front, and it really was not that much work at all. So projects number 2 through 5 are some of my all-time favorite French country Christmas projects. I hope you enjoy this. We are going to be using 2 IOD molds. We'll be using Village Market and Fleur de Lis. And I am casting also the lock and key mold because we'll be using that later on. So what I'm using is Fabricast. It's a 50% part 1, 50% part 2. You mix equal amounts and then you stir it. This is a fast casting resin. And so what that means is within about 10 minutes, this will be ready to use or demold. So usually what I do is I put my resin in the largest pieces first. I find that the less resin that I have in my silicone cup, the easier it is to pour. So when I have to go and do the fine, smaller pieces, I usually do that last. I will tell you that the Fabricast resin, it cures very, very fast. So you have to be prepared for that and not make too much up at one time, and know that you need to be prepared to pour it immediately as soon as you mix it. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wait for these to cure, and you'll know it's cured. They turn completely white. And as you can see, I'm pulling the lock and key first because I over poured that, and the resin stays pliable for just a little bit when you pull it out, and that is the easiest time to trim it back if you've over poured. So now we're going to start our project, and I am using some tongue depressors that I bought on, I believe I got these at possibly the dollar store. I did buy some more on Amazon in bulk. It was actually cheaper than buying them at the dollar store as far as quantity. but they're readily available and very, very inexpensive. And so what I'm doing here is I have 7 popsicle sticks going across and then 2 going the other way, and I took some Tite Bond on there, and I am basically making a fence panel. So I made a few of those and left them overnight so they're completely dry. Of course, you could hot glue those if you wanted to and be able to use them right away. And so now you can see there's some ends sticking out, and I'm just taking my scissors, and it's very easy to cut those across. They're not very thick. These work really, really great for the project that we're doing because you can use these as standalone decorations, or you can use them as ornaments because they end up being light enough. In any case, what I'm going to be doing first is I am taking the color Everett from Fusion, and it's a kind of a grayish green color. I just wanted a darker kind of grayish, brownish color or greenish color to go over these, and we're going to be just layering paint. So this is the first layer, and I am just using a chip brush to go over this. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to cover most of it. And I'm going to do the front and the back. And I'm going to do all 4 of these. We're making 4. And it's just not necessary to do another coat. It's not necessary to be perfect. We're going to do all 4, and then we're going to let them dry and move on to the next step. So now what I'm doing, after my little fence panels are dry, I am mixing Paint Couture's Pine Cone. It's a brown color with a little bit of salt wash to get some texture. And I'm not making a lot. I'm making enough to kind of just add some texture over my little fence panels. We're going to be doing kind of a mixed media situation going on here. So there's going to be a lot of texture and layers to these little panels. So what I'm doing is I'm just using my little Cricut tool here, but obviously you can use a little spatula, whatever you have. You could use another tongue depressor, which I do at some point. And I'm just taking this and kind of scraping it on in different spots. I just want a very random amount of this pine cone with the salt wash mixed around it. I definitely don't want to cover it all. And salt wash is an additive that you mix with your paint. Will give it texture, and it works extremely well. I love it. I use it all the time. So now what I'm doing is I am putting milk paint on with a chip brush. I didn't show you mixing it, but milk paint is a powdered paint, and this is Sweet Pickins milk paint. Window pane is a color, and it is a 50% powdered mix and then 50% water. You mix it, and then you put it on, and I'm putting on very, very sparingly, kind of. It's not really a dry brush because I'm adding paint to my brush, but I'm basically skimming over it. I am trying to achieve the look of an old fence, you know, that's been around for a long time and it's been chipping, and when I put too much paint on, I wipe it off, and I know it looks like a hot mess, but trust the process. This is just one of the layers, another one of the layers. So now what I'm doing is I'm going over the castings from the market mold and the fleur-de-lis that we cast earlier with the pine cone color, the same color we used on our little fence panels. And this is the bottom layer. So we're going to go ahead and go over this. We're trying to kind of create a rustic French country look to these with kind of a little farmhouse flair. So they're all going to be similar tones, nothing really bright or different. So we're going to go over all of these and then we're going to let them dry. So after they're completely dry, I am going to go over these, basically skimming the top with that same milk paint, that window pane. And I'm going to leave all the dark areas in the back. I'm trying not to fill those in, and I'm using that same chip brush. I find that a chip brush works really well on this, or possibly like a fan brush. You don't want to be too heavy-handed, or you end up, covering all of your first layer, and you don't want to do that. So I go over all of these with that, and then I let that dry. So this is just a little peat pot that I cut in half. They're very easy to cut, and then I covered it with that same window pane. We're going to use that later. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking some vintage photo from Ranger, and I'm just putting it down on my parchment paper, and I've also added a little gray ink, and I'm taking my little dauber and I'm mixing it with alcohol, not water. And I'm just taking some gauze that I have that's very white, just plain old gauze, and then some other sackcloth material, and I'm just trying to vintage them up a little bit. And the reason I use alcohol is that makes it a permanent color. It won't come off. And anyway, I just did that so that we're going to be using that in a minute on our project. And here is some corrugated cardboard that I got in some packaging, and I'm just going over that with some of that same window pane paint, just to get it ready to use later in our little mixed media project. And then this is just a regular brown napkin. I end up not using this, but I do that. I put some white on that, and I'm also just taking some burlap and I'm putting some of that same paint on there. And now what I'm doing is I am taking my apothecary labels and I am stamping some of the labels on this paper. And this is a homemade paper, handmade paper that I bought off of Amazon. I like the texture of it. Obviously, you can use any paper that you have, and I'm mainly doing it for the texture, and I'm just using different labels from that set. It's a wonderful set. Obviously, it has all of the different letters that fit inside the labels. I was originally going to type in French what each animal was, and then I decided not to. I don't know, I just got kind of lazy, but that was my original intent, which of course you could do if you wanted to add that twist to this whole thing. I don't know what happened. It was late at night and I just decided I didn't want to look it up and I didn't want to spell it out. So now what I'm doing is I have the ephemeral stamp. I love this stamp, guys. Oh my gosh, this is a wonderful stamp. It has so many different fonts. I have another whole channel that I do junk journals. I think this would be great for people who do junk journals, people that like to make tags. It has so many different fonts. And what I was showing you there is that you could have typed just some of these French words inside the label. And I did not do that, but I was just showing you could do that. Anyway, I am just stamping all over these little panels with different fonts from this stamp. I had so much fun. And I'm using the gray paint, I forgot what you call it, from IOD, not the black. And just going over it all in different places just to give me a background on all of these. And it's just, I had a lot of fun playing with these. This is a great stamp, guys. It really, really is. You can use it, you know, for big projects all in one piece, or you can take it apart and use it for tags. See, all those little pieces come off individually. Plus, there's such a variety of different stamps in there. Oh, I really love this. So you'll see at the little labels, somehow I lost the footage, but I just kind of tore them out with my hands. I put a little vintage photo around the edges, and then I stamped different French words in the middle. You could use that, get that from your ephemeral stamp and put that on there, or I happen to have a stamp already in my stash that had French words that I have no idea what they say. But I'm going over my different castings and also my fence post with a little bit of extra paint. And I'm just using a little bit lighter color of white. And all I'm using on that is called Champlin. And now what I'm doing is I'm heating up my little rooster or chicken or whatever, just to kind of bend it a little, because I want it to fit on that little peat moss half that I have there. And I needed it to kind of form to it a little bit, so I kind of curved it. If you heat up your casting from resin, you can usually bend it a little, and that's what I did. And then I put my Type Bond Quick and Thick on there, and then I went ahead and put some clamps on there and just kind of let it sit for about an hour while I did some other things. And so after that, all I really did is I started going through the stash of stuff that we had, like all the different papers and the textures and things. And I had gotten out some old book pages that I have. I have a whole channel, another channel that I have over 400 videos that I did junk journals. And so I have a lot of that in my stash. But mainly what I was looking for is different textures and different colors of paper. And I'm going ahead and I'm just adding all the little pieces and little textures and things on here, just to kind of make a little mixed media situation going on here, and adding as much texture as I can. And I just do that on all of the different ornaments. And the way I work is I put them all the way I want them, and then I pull them all off, and hopefully I can remember how I put it, and then I just start gluing everything on. And sometimes things change, sometimes they don't. But anyway, that's the process that I go through, and that's, it's really fun and very enjoyable, and this is very addictive. Once you do a few of these, you'll get hooked, and they go very, very fast, very fast. As long as you don't overthink things, and that's the key. Just don't overthink it. I promise you, whatever you come up with will look wonderful. When I'm doing these, I'm using a combination of my Type Bond and also my glue, my hot glue. You can use whatever glue you would like to use. I like to use a little bit of both on this. You can use whatever kind of glue that you think will work well. This is not a heavy piece, so I don't think you need to really worry too much about anything, construction wise coming off. The only thing I know is on hot glue is that it cannot be permanent after a while. But I use Gorilla Glue, and most of the time I feel like that bonds extremely well. If you notice here, what I did is I crumpled up that label a little bit. I'm trying to add as much texture as I can to this. That is the key to all of it, is texture and layers, and that's really what makes this look good in the end, is all the different layers, all the different textures. And you really can't appreciate it, I don't think, until you see it in person, and that is when the beauty of it really shows through, is when you can really see all those layers up close. Now here what I'm having to do is I'm going to go ahead and take that peat, the peat planter there, and I'm bending it around the sides, so that gives me something to glue down. And these are very, very lightweight, so they work great for crafts like this. So we're just going to stick that down with some hot glue, and our little rooster has stuck to it just great. And I don't know that I showed you that I did stamp on the front of that also. And then I just add, my little layers on this as I did just like the other ones. I do add a little bit of Spanish moss in there later, and I do put a little glue in there to make it permanent. But anyway, that's pretty much all I do on this one. So after I get that all glued down, I just put some Spanish moss in there. And you know, I did add all of those other pieces that were part of the village market mold, the little wheat pieces and the other whatever flowers they are on there too, just to add more dimension. So I do add more of that to all of these. I'm sure you noticed it as I was doing it. So now I'm getting out my rusty wire. I bought this from Factory Direct Crafts. I think you can get it on Amazon as well. And I'm just cutting some pieces that I'm going to be putting through there. And I punched some holes with my crocodile. It punched very easily. I just did a small hole on each side. And then I'm going to take the end of a paintbrush and I'm just going to swirl it around there to keep the wire from going through, and also to just have a little decorative edge on there. And that is just one more part of the decoration, is the rusty wire. Of course, you could use twine, you could use whatever you have. So that is all I do to these guys, and I think they turn out fantastic. I love them. I think they're very dimensional and interesting, and would be a wonderful gift. Alright, project number 6. This is our last project. Super easy. You could also have it up all year long. So anyway, I have this picture frame that I thrifted quite a long time ago. It is very ornate. I got it at Goodwill for $3.99. I love picking these up. I always, if I see something that's like this, I always grab it because I figure I can always do something with it. So anyway, I have drop cloth here. I'm trying really hard to show you different ways that you can use these inlays. And this is this gorgeous, beautiful angel that is in the Gloria set. There's two of them like this, and they're gorgeous. So I am going to be putting this on the drop cloth, and the drop cloth is going to work very much like the burlap. You don't have to put quite as much paint on it because it's not as porous. But we're going to go ahead and put this on, and you're going to see how beautiful it turns out on drop cloth. It's one of my favorite ways to use these inlays. They turn out fantastic on drop cloth. So we're going to go through the same process that we did before. Going to make sure that I have it nice and coated with paint. Spray it, and I'm going to go ahead and put that angel on there. And we go through exactly the same process that you would on any other surface. So while I'm letting that dry, I'm going to work on the frame. I tape off the back a little bit so I don't get paint on it. And I'm going to be using that same drop cloth, and I'm going over the entire frame, and I'm not trying to do it perfectly. I want some of that black to show through. And it's kind of an enamel, a shiny enamel coating. It's some sort of metal. It's a kind of a heavier metal. But I'm going to go ahead and do that because I want this to have a very vintage French country look to it. So I'm going to go over the whole thing, and I'm trying not to be perfect with it. I'm only going to do one coat, but I'm going to try and get, a lot of it, but leave some of the black showing. So after it all dries a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and distress it back a little bit. I'm using my little finger sander, and I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more of the black showing through. And then I'm going to take some black wax, and I'm going to go over the frame with it. I have not put a clear coat on it or clear wax, so it's going to penetrate, and a lot of it is going to get in those crevices and stay, and that's okay because that's kind of the look I want. And I'm going to go ahead and wipe a lot of it out. But if you did not want as much, you could have put a clear wax down or a clear coat. I wanted a lot of the black to stay in there. So after I get the wax out that I don't want in there, I'm going to take the drop cloth with a fan brush, and I'm going to dry brush over the high points in there to bring back some of the white. And then I'm going to go over the whole thing with Extreme Guard Top Coat Matte just to finish it off. Now I'm going to take the piece of glass that was in the frame, and I'm going to use it to trace out a portion that we're going to use for the back of this frame. And this is a vintage piece of music paper. It has a little bit of a patina to it, so it's not stark white. And I'm going to put this in the very back of the frame. I'm going to go ahead and decoupage that with a Paint Couture decoupage medium. Just going to lay that back in there. our angel is going to sit on top of that, and the music paper is going to show a little bit. So now we're going to go through the same process that we do with all of the other inlays, and we're going to go ahead and mist it and let that water penetrate. Give it some time to work and pull it off, and you're going to see how beautiful it turns out on the drop cloth. Absolutely gorgeous. This works really well on canvas also. If you have maybe a piece that you want to put on a piece of canvas and then maybe frame it, it would work great on a stretch canvas. Or you could do a big piece of drop cloth. So I cut it a little bit closer. I wanted a little bit narrower because I wanted the music paper to show. So I'm going to go ahead and distress this with my little Cricut tool here and make sure the edges are a little bit frayed. I want that kind of a distressed look. And I'm going to position this inside the frame and then put the glass in there. I want a little bit of the music paper showing on each side, but I want that distressed look to, I mean, you could have put it into where the drop cloth was doing the showing in the whole thing, but I wanted that music paper, and I think it turned out beautiful, and this was super easy to do. Love this. It may be my favorite, and it's probably the easiest. Okay, that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. If you happen to need any IOD, Fusion, Paint Couture, Pen Art products, Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, JRV, or any decoupage paper, you can get that on my website, rehatchdesigns.com. $50 free shipping and $9 flat rate shipping after that. And I will be back again on Wednesday with a all new video. See you then. Take care.